my warrior mate. In the shadowy expanse of the moonlit vale, the Werewolf Kingdom stood resilient under the leadership of Prince Kael. Tall and broad-shouldered, Kael exuded the commanding presence of a ruler, his every movement brimming with confidence and strength. His honey-amber eyes gleamed with intelligence, hinting at the formidable mind behind his regal demeanor. Yet, those same eyes carried a sorrowful depth, a constant reminder of the sins of his lineage and the curse that plagued his existence. Despite this, Kael ruled with unwavering determination, his heart torn between duty to his people and the ache of his unresolved fate. Years ago, a witch had cursed Kael, a punishment for the war crimes of his father, the late king. The curse dictated that Kael could never bond with anyone other than his fated mate. If he attempted to, an icy numbness would overtake him, a visceral reminder of the witch's wrath. This cruel restriction isolated him, leaving a void in his heart that no companionship could fill. Night after night, Kael wandered the cold halls of his castle, the silence stark against the bustling life outside. Despite his frustration and loneliness, Kael bore the weight of this fate with stoic resolve, devoting himself to ruling. Yet, in quiet moments, the ache of longing surfaced, a reminder of what he had lost and might never find. Across the kingdom, in a modest woodland village, lived Lara. The daughter of her pax beta, Lara was far from the idealized image of a beta, her fierce independence and fiery determination setting her apart. Unlike the other young wolves who polished their appearances and practiced their charms, Lara honed her combat skills in the training ring, her hands calloused and her limbs scarred from countless sparring sessions. Despite her boyish demeanor, she wrestled with insecurities tied to her femininity. Her pronounced curves often drew unwanted attention, which she tried to hide beneath loose clothing and a sharp tongue. Her mismatched eyes, one a deep sapphire, the other a striking gold, added to her status as an oddity among her peers. It was these eyes that invited not only curiosity, but cruel teasing. Many wolves whispered behind her back, questioning her place in the pack, while others openly mocked her unique appearance. Yet, through it all, Lara remained steadfast. She channeled her frustrations into her training, letting her strength and skill speak louder than any words ever could. One afternoon, after yet another grueling training session, a group of wolves approached her with mocking grins. "Still trying to prove you're one of us, Lara?" sneered a tall she-wolf, her tone dripping with derision. "I don't need to prove anything to you." Lara shot back, her voice steady but her fists clenched at her sides. "I'm stronger than you'll ever be." The she-wolf's laughter echoed. "Oh, you think being a warrior will make you special? Look at you, a freak with two-toned eyes. You'll always be an outcast." Lara's jaw tightened, but she refused to let the sting of the words show. She turned away, focusing on the horizon where the sun dipped behind the forest. "Say what you want. Words are easier than action, and I've yet to see you win a single fight against me." The she-wolf fell silent, her earlier smugness evaporating, but the encounter left Lara's heart heavy. As much as she prided herself on her strength, the loneliness of being different weighed on her shoulders. Her mismatched eyes, once a symbol of her uniqueness, felt like a brand separating her from the pack she so desperately wanted to belong to. Even so, she resolved to press on, her warrior's spirit burning brighter with each challenge she overcame. Yet, Lara harbored a secret unknown to her. The village's ancient oracle had once whispered to her parents about a prophecy surrounding their daughter. She is destined for greatness. Her strength will unite kingdoms. The oracle's words had been both a blessing and a burden. Her parents had felt a surge of pride, imagining their daughter's potential to change the world, but also a gnawing fear of what such knowledge could bring. They chose to shield Lara from the prophecy, hiding it even from their closest friends. As Lara's 18th birthday approached, an electric anticipation thrummed in her veins. The days leading up to the full moon were spent in a whirlwind of quiet preparation and moments of shared warmth with her family. Her parents, though often reserved, seemed more tender than usual. Her father took her on long walks through the forest, imparting wisdom about the shifting process and the responsibilities it would bring. Her mother, in her own subtle way, ensured Lara's favorite meals were prepared and her clothes mended, a quiet display of care that Lara deeply appreciated. They did not have much, but were very happy together. When the night of her first shift finally arrived, the full moon illuminated the sky with an ethereal glow. Her body ached and burned as her wolf broke free for the first time, the transformation both painful and exhilarating. When it was over, Lara's wolf form was stunning. A large, elegant creature with fur that shimmered like moonlight and eyes that mirrored her mismatched human ones. Her pack's alpha and elders were astonished, marveling at the strength and beauty of her wolf. For a beta, her transformation was extraordinary, and as her family looked on with pride, Lara felt for the first time that she truly belonged to the pack. That night, as Lara rested, vivid dreams invaded her mind. She saw a man, tall and commanding, with piercing amber eyes and a presence that made her pulse race. In the dreams, he would reach out to her, whispering words she couldn't quite understand. The visions grew more intense, his eyes burning into her soul, as her wolf stirred with an unfamiliar yearning. Suddenly, the dream shifted, and an overwhelming sense of dread consumed her. A shadow loomed behind the man, and she screamed, her voice echoing in the silence of her room. Her parents burst into her room moments later, their faces etched with worry. "Lara, what happened?" her father demanded, his voice thick with concern as he knelt beside her. Her mother quickly wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. I don't know," Lara stammered, her breath coming in shallow gasps. It was a nightmare, but it felt so real. She clutched her chest, her heart pounding as the image of the amber-eyed man lingered in her mind. "It's all right, sweetheart, you're safe here with us," her mother whispered soothingly, brushing a stray lock of hair from Lara's damp forehead. Her father exchanged a glance with her mother, worry deepening the lines on his face. They stayed with her until her breathing steadied, their presence a small comfort against the lingering unease of the dream. Unbeknownst to Lara, her dreams were shared by Prince Kael. On the night of her shift, Kael's visions began. He saw glimpses of a fierce, radiant woman with two-toned eyes. Yet, burdened by years of false hope, Kael dismissed the visions as illusions, unable to believe they held any meaning. 2 years passed. Lara grew stronger, her reputation shifting as she proved herself in the pack's warrior trials. She rose through the ranks, earning admiration and respect. Despite her accomplishments, she couldn't shake the recurring dreams of the amber-eyed man, who seemed to grow more real with each vision. Meanwhile, Kael's kingdom faced unrest. Neighboring packs questioned his ability to rule without a mate, urging him to solidify alliances through marriage. Kael's patience wore thin, but the prophecy lingered in his mind. Reluctantly, he agreed to attend the annual Werewolf Games, a grand event where packs from across the kingdom competed in displays of strength and skill. Perhaps he thought his mate might be among the competitors. The games were held in the sprawling parklands, a neutral ground for all packs. Lara, now a celebrated warrior, was chosen to represent her pack in the female division. Her parents beamed with pride as she prepared for the challenges ahead. The competition was fierce, but Lara's determination and skill shone through. She dominated every event, her wolf's agility and strength unmatched. By the final day, she stood victorious, the champion of the female wolves. As Lara's name was announced, the crowd erupted in cheers. Prince Kael, seated on a dais overlooking the arena, rose to congratulate the winners. As he descended the steps, His eyes locked onto Lara's. Time seemed to freeze. Kael's breath caught in his throat. From the moment he set foot on the competition grounds, he had sensed her. A faint, tantalizing scent lingered in the air, one that made his wolf restless, and his focus waver. It was her. He was sure of it. Yet, he had forced himself to bury the distraction, focusing instead on his formal duties as prince. The hours spent overseeing the games had been excruciating, the pull toward her growing stronger with every passing moment. By the time the final event concluded, the anticipation was nearly unbearable. Now, as his eyes locked onto hers, he knew. Those eyes, one sapphire, one gold, were unmistakable. The woman from his vision stood before him, radiant and real. Every doubt, every moment of restraint, melted away in an instant. Lara, too, felt an undeniable pull as their gazes met. Her mismatched eyes widened as she became mesmerized by the molten amber of his gaze. It was as though his eyes held a world within them, drawing her in, leaving her breathless and unable to look away. Her wolf stirred, recognizing the bond instantly, a low growl of yearning rumbling in her chest. For a moment, everything around her faded. The cheering crowd, the distant murmurs. All that remained was him, and the magnetic pull that tethered them together. Kael approached her, his voice steady, despite the storm raging within him. "Congratulations on your victory," he said, his amber eyes searching hers. "What is your name, mate?" "Lara," she replied, her voice firm but tinged with awe. "Daughter of the Beta of Silverclaw Pack." A murmur rippled through the crowd as Kael reached out, his hand brushing against hers. A jolt of warmth surged between them, their bond solidifying in an instant. The realization hit the whole crowd. They were mates. A murmur of astonishment rippled through the assembly, quickly escalating into jubilant cheers. Elders exchanged knowing nods, acknowledging the fulfillment of the long-awaited prophecy, while younger wolves whispered excitedly among themselves. Some gasped, their eyes wide with awe as they recognized the significance of this moment, while others howled in celebration, their voices rising to the heavens. The prophecy had been fulfilled at last, cementing a new chapter for the kingdom. The onlookers watched in stunned silence as Kael took Lara's hand and kneeled. "This is my mate. The prophecy has been fulfilled." Cheers erupted, but Lara barely registered them. Her heart raced as she looked into Kael's eyes, her wolf howling in triumph. The realization hit her. The ruthless prince is my mate, and I have to be a queen. Suddenly everything darkened, and Kael just caught her on time before falling. When Lara opened her eyes, the bright, sterile light of the hospital room stung her vision. Her mother and father were on either side of her, their faces etched with worry and relief. Her mother leaned forward, brushing a hand gently over Lara's forehead. "Thank the moon you're awake," she murmured, her voice trembling. "What happened?" Lara asked groggily, her mind struggling to piece together the fragmented images of the competition. "Did I faint?" She glanced at her parents, who exchanged a hesitant look. "You collapsed," her father said, his deep voice steady, but filled with concern. "Your wolf might have been overwhelmed. It's not uncommon, given everything that happened." Lara frowned, fragments of the day flashing in her mind. The amber-eyed man, his powerful presence, and the magnetic pull she had felt. She shook her head. "It must have been another dream," she whispered, her mismatched eyes clouded with confusion. "That man, I keep seeing him." Before her parents could respond, a soft sound drew Lara's attention. Her gaze shifted, and there he was. Kael. He stood near the window, his amber eyes fixed on her, his expression unreadable but intense. The air seemed to grow heavier as realization dawned on Lara. "It wasn't a dream," she murmured, her voice barely audible. Her heart raced as Kael stepped closer, his presence commanding and undeniable. Her mother sighed, her hand tightening around Lara's. "Lara, there's something we need to tell you," she began, her voice laced with apprehension. "You remember the prophecy? The one we've kept secret all these years?" Lara nodded slowly, her mismatched eyes flicking between her parents and Kael. "The prophecy spoke of your destiny," her father continued, glancing at Kael, "but we never imagined it would lead to him." He glanced at Kael, his expression unreadable. "Him?" Lara's voice wavered, her gaze locking onto Kael's. Kael's deep voice finally broke the tension. "I am Prince Kael," he said, his words carrying both authority and a surprising softness. "Your mate, and the one bound to you by fate." Lara's breath hitched, her world tilting as the weight of his words sank in. The prophecy, the dreams, it was all real. But as the realization settled, a flood of anger and frustration surged within her. She sat up abruptly, her mismatched eyes blazing. "A queen?" she hissed, her voice trembling with emotion. "I'm supposed to become a queen. Look at me. I'm not elegant or graceful or even pretty enough to be someone's queen. I'm just a warrior who's barely fit to belong in her own pack." Kael's expression darkened, his amber eyes narrowing. "Enough," he said sharply, his voice cutting through the room like a blade. "You are my mate. The bond has chosen you for a reason, and I won't stand here and listen to you doubt yourself." His tone was stern, but the flicker of pain in his gaze betrayed his frustration. Lara's jaw clenched, her anger spilling over. "You don't understand. I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask to be tied to you or to have some prophecy dictate my life." Kael's features hardened, and without another word he turned on his heel and strode out of the room, his presence leaving a heavy silence in his wake. Lara's heart pounded, a mixture of guilt and anger swirling within her as the door closed behind him. She turned to her parents, her voice shaking. "I don't know if I can do this. How am I supposed to be a queen? I don't even feel like I belong anywhere, let alone next to him." Her father placed a steady hand on her shoulder, his expression firm but kind. "Lara, being scared is natural, but you are stronger than you think. This isn't just about fate. It's about your ability to rise to the challenge. You've proven yourself as a warrior. Now you must prove yourself as a leader." Her mother nodded, her voice soft yet resolute. "And as a woman, you have the power to soften even the hardest hearts. Your father and I have seen it in you, Lara. Kael may be strong, but he's carrying a heavy burden. You can help him just as he can help you." Before Lara could respond, a knock at the door interrupted their moment. Kael's beta entered, his demeanor calm and respectful. "Miss Lara, the Alpha has extended a formal invitation for you to join him for dinner this evening," he announced. Lara straightened, her mismatched eyes flashing with determination. "No," she said firmly. "I want to see him now." Her tone left no room for argument, and the beta's brows lifted slightly in surprise. "I'll inform him immediately," he replied, bowing his head slightly before exiting the room. Lara's parents exchanged a glance, a mix of pride and worry crossing their faces as they watched their daughter prepare to face the prince once more. Later that evening, Kael returned to her room. His amber eyes still held a flicker of tension, but there was a softness there as well. Lara stood as he entered, her heart pounding with a mix of nerves and determination. "Prince Kael," she began, her voice quiet but steady. "I need to apologize. I spoke out of anger earlier, and I let my fear get the better of me. This situation is overwhelming, but it's not fair to take that out on you." Kael studied her for a moment, then nodded. "I understand," he said, his tone gentler than before. "This is new for both of us." Taking a deep breath, Lara added, "I'd like to start over. If we're to do this, we need to try. Together." Could we go for a walk? I could use some fresh air. Kael's expression softened further, and after a moment, he extended his hand. Come, I know the perfect place. As they walked, the tension lingered, leaving them uncertain of what to say. The cool night air wrapped around them, and moonlight illuminated their path. But silence stretched between them. By the time they reached the grand greenhouse, they had exchanged only a few polite words, their unease still evident. The greenhouse was a haven of warmth and beauty, filled with vibrant flowers and the gentle hum of nature. Candles had been lit throughout the space, their soft, flickering light casting a warm glow that danced along the glass walls. The sun was setting outside, painting the horizon in hues of orange and pink. As Kael and Lara's eyes locked, an unspoken intensity filled the air. Without a word, Kael leaned in and pressed his lips to hers, his kiss, full of longing and restraint, finally unleashed. The warmth of the bond surged through her, lighting every nerve in her body, but just as quickly Kael pulled back, his voice thick with emotion. I'm sorry, he murmured, his amber eyes clouded with guilt. I couldn't wait any longer. The moment he stepped back, the absence of his touch left a cold, aching void that made Lara's wolf whimper. Her breath caught, and before she could think, she reached out to grab his arm. Don't, she whispered, her voice barely above a tremble. Stay. Kael's eyes widened briefly, but then she pulled him back, their lips meeting once more. This time, the kiss deepened, a mix of desperation and connection that neither could resist. The world around them blurred as the flickering candles and setting sun cast a warm glow, framing the undeniable bond pulling them together.